How's it going, my acolytes? My name is Farum Dark, and welcome to our first solo video, actually, and welcome to my face. If you see me looking up and down, I actually have two cameras. I have my laptop camera right in front of me, and I have my webcam up here. So most of the time, you will see me looking down this way, when I'm supposed to be looking up this way. It's okay, though. I have an interesting video for you guys today, as I've noticed that some people are not fully in tune with how you play Yu-Gi-Oh! And well, I'm going to get to that in another video, of course. Today I'm going to be looking at a deck build of mine that I am very proud of, and it's probably my ace deck in the whole. I have brought this deck to 2 tournaments. I'm not going to say which ones to be exact, but the overall idea is that this deck has been built for the intention of just dominating my opponents and making sure that nothing nothing stays on the field for very long. Keep in mind, this deck that I have in front of me is a very semi-competitive deck. It's not fully integrated, so it doesn't run a lot of stuff like links and fusion, or not more like fusions, but whatever. But before we get into it, I'm just going to tell you guys a little bit about the deck and my experience with this deck, to say the least. This deck has been with me for the very longest time and has been growing in power ever since I have done smaller tournaments and local events. This is my Blue Eyes Dominance deck, and as you can see, I'm going to pull up the card right now. This is part of the deck. This is my beautiful Maximum Gold Blue Eyes that I have pulled recently. I add that right into my deck, swapping out a old version of one of the cards. I say old as a derogatory term, but it's not really that bad. It's just I love the look of this card so much more than the original, but it just makes it look so much nicer. Also, on the back is my personalized Darksage sleeves that my partner Shadow, she's currently downstairs doing some stuff, she actually commissioned the artwork, and I had them made through another company. Which, funny enough, as soon as we have some things figured out, Jess's artwork / Shadow's artwork will be coming up for commission work and stuff like that as people get on. Though I will say that she's plan, according to things going on, she wants to get a Patreon account, so that's what we're gonna do. And as soon as that gets all good to go, we're going to start using that for artwork commissions and whatnot. So if you guys are interested in that, leave a comment down below and we'll go from there. Anywho, let's get into this. So, a little explanation about this deck, first of all, is that this deck, again, is not very competitive. It is powerful, but not competitive. And the reason for that is because a lot of the deck choices I have made are purely for the absence, and not absence, what the hell is the word? Never mind. The staying true to an archetype that is probably one of my favorites, and that is, of course, the Blue Eyes archetype. So I'm going to go through the monsters and the plan, of course, the explanation to this deck. So let's get into it first, and of course we have the Blue Eyes, which you'll see right over here. So, Blue Eyes, very standard staple of classic Yu-Gi-Oh! Probably one of the first cards to ever really be given the title of most sought-after card, other than maybe Exodia the Forbidden One and, my experience, the God cards. But these 3 cards in my deck hold the staple for what the main strategy of this deck is, and not for what the big boss is. Of course, I run it support cards, so we have cards like Blue Eyes Alternative, which I run 3 of those. Chaos Max Dragon, I run 1 of those because it's a really big frickin' boss monster, in my opinion, that if you get on the field, you have pretty much constant dominance for the first maybe 7 to 8 turns of the game until you hit that point. And coupled with a support card like Chaos Form, which again, I only run 1 of them. Blue's Alternative, of course, for the extra summon, and of course for that other fusion support for Neo Blue Eyes, which is really nice in a lot of situations, and honestly it works so well for removal, as soon as it's summoned you can activate the effect optionally, of course, but you can banish one card on the field no matter what circumstance. As long as it doesn't have a banishment negation effect, you're pretty much set. Other support cards I'm looking at for this deck is, I have the deck in my hands down here. Of course, I run one copy of Protector with Eyes of Blue, so one of these guys right here. I run 3 Whitestone of Ancients because that is a really good search card. And to banish it from the graveyard, to get any Blue Eyes monster I want back from my graveyard or my hand, it is really good for just a lot of tightness scenarios. And funny fact, this deck has only ever been beaten twice. And its consistency, while it is a 52 or 53 card deck, I can't remember exactly what number it is, it is very consistent for what it wants to do. And yeah, you do get stalled out, but I put a couple options in here, and you'll see that in a second, that really rock the competition as far as, trying to get a big monster. And for my deck, big power is what I'm looking for, and that is the staple I stay to. Of course, this is usually a side deck piece, but I put these in the deck anyways. I always put one copy, if I can run it, of Blue Eyes Shining Dragon. And while it is a staple of the movie, the very first Yu-Gi-Oh movie, Pyramid of Light, it was not exactly what we intended it for, but at the same time, that once per turn negation effect can work in certain situations. And of course, the attack boost, if you're running a pure dragon deck, is just frick insane. The next couple cards I'm going to be bringing out, basically, I have the deck down here just for reference, but we have Manju of the 10,000 Hands. It is a very good flip monster for its day and age, and funny enough, there's a lot of cards nowadays that actually negate flip effects, but at the same time, it works very well in tandem for what you want to do. And quite frankly, it's not a bad idea to put one of these if you're going for a ritual strategy where you can either fetch a monster or fetch a ritual card, which honestly, in my side deck, I usually run Paladin of White Dragon and its ritual spell as well. This Manju is the reason why it is in there, because if I ever need to return it to my hand by any means necessary, I have cards in my side deck for that. But Manju is the one thing, like, if I'm holding on to either Chaos Form or Chaos Max, Paladin of White Dragon or White Dragon Ritual, I can put him on the field, flip him up next turn if my opponent doesn't swing at him. The next card is another Blue Eye support, and is probably one of my favorites as far as just aesthetic and, thought process. Maiden with Eyes of Blue. Now, Maiden is a very special card to me because watching the anime as a kid, Kasara, which is what the character is based off of, I'm pretty sure, is a very unique aesthetic for a character as far as, showing what the Blue Eyes can do as far as a dual spirit. As well as for anybody who didn't watch. But when it's targeted for an attack or by an effect, by an attack, you can negate the attack, switch it to defense mode, and then summon a Blue Eyes, which is honestly a very good effect, especially when it is a tuner monster that works well with, say, Azure Eyes Silver Dragon and Dragon Spirit of White, I want to say? Or is that something else? No, that's something else. But anyways, very good staple card. I love it to bits. I threw in some classic Kaiba cards in here as well because, honestly, you can't have a Blue Eyes deck without some Kaiba cards in it. So cards like Voice Raider, the King of Dragons, which is another support card that they added in, I think, early 2015, 2016. And it has been a very good card for the old Fluid Summoning Dragons, and it's 2 new support cards, which I think I ran both of them in this deck. I'll get to the spell cards and trap cards later on. Same with the extra deck. Of course, Kaiba Man. You can't really have Blue Eyes without Kaiba Man, the spell, or especially when you can summon him to the field, tribute him, and then summon a Blue Eyes from, I think, your hand. Yes, your hand. And honestly, it works so well in that regard because, honestly, there's no issue with that as long as your opponent can't just negate that effect like that. Next up, for some defense, we have Shieldwing. And Shieldwing is actually a winged beast monster. It's not a dragon, which is kind of upsetting. But it works in the way of up to twice per turn it cannot be destroyed by battle. So, say your opponent swings into you for, I don't know, a Vorse Raider, so 1900 attack points. At a 900 defense, it is measly at best, but it still blocks your opponent for 2 attacks. And only if that works, so it is a really good defensive card to have in any deck that runs some slow starts and sometimes even some bad reputations for stalling and decking out. The other two defensive cards I guess I'll point out. I do run Spirit Reaper, which is actually a zombie monster, and again, this monster cannot be destroyed by battle, and after a effect resolves that targets this, destroy it, but fine, it's a zombie. And whenever it inflicts damage to your opponent by battle, your opponent discards 1 card at random. I don't see any problem with that. And yeah, it is a quick kind of pop monster, but at the same time, not being destroyed by battle is a really good effect for a lot of these cards, because it keeps your monster on the field rather than letting it go to the graveyard and doing its business there. The other last defense card as far as monsters go in this deck, as far as I can remember, other than another card I'll show later, is Renge, Gatekeeper of Dark World. I know it's a bit weird running a couple dark monsters in a light deck, but at the same time, it works so well with this tandem, because if you get this out early game, it is an easy defense blocker or defense wall against some of the more basic monsters. Nowadays, with all the special summons you can do in a turn, it doesn't exactly matter all that much, but at the same time, it works out well enough to do the job. And that's what you want to do, is you want some primary defenses and even some fodder in case you need an extra hand. Now into the other kind of summon support cards I want to get into is Assault Wyvern. And Assault Wyvern is a very cool aesthetic for a monster as far as its ability goes. So at 1800 attack points, it has the effect of when it destroys a monster by battle, you can tribute it and then special summon a drag monster from your hand or graveyard, except for one of these. The other part of that is that, say you have a deck that revolves around, say, Felgren Dragon. Felgren Dragon is the best used in the graveyard after it's on the field. The other thing I wanted to do this card I wanted to have when this was more of a fetch card. And the fetch card I really wanted to do was a staple I saw in one of the movies. Like Assault Wyvern, a certain monster caught my eye when I watched Kaiba versus Agami, or Diva at that point, in the Dark Side of Dimensions movie. That is Crystal Dragon. Now, Crystal Dragon is very similar in kind of terms to Assault Wyvern, is if it during the battle step, if it battled this turn, so whether it's by direct damage or by destroying a monster by effect, if at any point it battles, you can add one level 8 dragon monster from your deck to your hand. And that is a really good fetch, because if you have 2 blue eyes in their hand, you can actually search out a blue eyes alternative, or even Chaos Max. Not Chaos Max. Yeah, Chaos Max. So if you really need to do that, it is a viable strategy to do so. And honestly, for level 6, it's not that bad. It's an effect monster, so it works in tandem with a lot of other cards. But the worst case scenario, the hardest part is getting on the field. Basically, that's all it is. But as soon as you're able to attack it with 2500 attack, not bad. Alright, now into some of the more basic ones, and then we'll get into the big guys. So first of all, I run 1 copy of Luster Dragon. Now, Luster Dragon is an old card. Back in the original Duel Monsters series, I think it's been played like 6 times, I remember, if I can remember correctly. The other point about it is it's a solid attacker for early game as 1900 attack. It's not bad, it's not great, but it's not bad. And honestly, it's been a staple for me. And of course, for the basic 2000 beat sticks, basically, 3 copies of Alexandrite Dragon. Alexandrite, common staple. If any dragon deck has them, you know you're not doing bad. At the same time, it's not a bad idea to run Alexandrite any dragon deck whatsoever. The only issue I think I'd have with it is the fact of it has no effect, but you get what you take. No, you get what you get. That's the term. And honestly, it's not a bad card to put in any deck, just a splash in there, piece there, whatever. Now, the last 6 cards of my monster category I'm going to throw in here is a classic combo that Yugi used in his tournament deck. And if you know what cards these cards are, you kind of can guess what I'm trying to do with the deck. Of course, it's not exactly the best strategy, but it works out just fine for getting some things on the field when you need it. And to be honest, it's not that bad at all. So I run the combination of Kings, Jacks, and Queen's Knight. Now, these 3 monsters work in tandem, as Queen Knight is a very basic one. King's Knight allows you to, when it's summoned, if you have Queen's Knight on the field already, you can special summon Jack's Knight from your hand or deck. Now that combination is actually pretty good for a quick summon, especially if you use double summon in your deck. Again, a very kind of commonplace card, but at the same time, it's not a bad idea. And of course, the last 3 cards of this monster section, I run Scapegoats. Not Scapegoat, Scapegoat. Now, reason why is because it is a tuner, a level 1 tuner. And much like its predecessor, Scapegoat, Scapegoat summons up to 4 or as many ghost sheep tokens that you can. And the good thing about this is it works as a defense and for a tribute summon. For what? Well, I'll get to that in just a moment. But it is a very handy card in a lot of situations and has won me or helped me win the duel a few times with a lot of how it comes up. Most of the time I use it for defense, but at the same time it's not bad to use it. So if you're running any a lot of combo heavy pieces and a lot of tribute heavy monsters, I would suggest running at least 2 in your deck, because I know it's not limited or semi-limited at all. But moving on to the last 2 cards in my monster section, for the hand stall stuff. Yes, that's right, hand stall. When you're being bricked by your own deck and all you have is high level monsters and your opponent has a field. What you can do is throw in this card in your deck. I don't highly recommend it, but it's a recommendation no matter what anyways. The card that I have put in this deck is Montage Dragon. From the very first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, I saw this, no, not the very first, a couple episodes in. It was one of the Yusei versus Trudge moments. Montage Dragon has the unique effect of you can send 3 other monsters from your hand to the graveyard, and this card gains 300 attack points for every star between the monsters. That being said, if you have, say, 3 Egyptian God cards in your hand, it's a lot of power, because that's 3 level 10s just going bye-bye. And of course, it's not the best scenario, but it does happen. I've gotten it as weak as 1,000 and as strong as 76. And last but not least, we have the big boss monster of my deck. Of course, you have to expect some things from me, especially as a kind of competitor. But as far as this deck goes, the big boss, not including the extra deck, is Obelisk Tormentor. Now you may want to ask why. Well, here's a little backstory. In the original series, in Duel Monsters, my 2 favorite god cards happen to be Slifer the Sky Dragon and Obelisk Tormentor. Slifer has always been my favorite, but my kind of embellishment in my friend group as being the Kaiba. As far as I'm looking at big power, I want big plays, I want dominance of the field. It kind of made sense to put Obelisk in this deck as far as compatibility and of course with Montage and the effect with some other stuff I have in the down the extra deck and something like that. It makes it very clear for me that if I'm running a traditional kind of Kaiba-esque deck, Obelisk has got to be in there. So, anywho, the spells that I use in this deck are kind of very varying, I guess is the term for it. but at the same time, this is a cohesive sort of way and mesh for me to use my strategies and my skills. When it comes to this deck, I aim for using fusions, and of course, as you saw, synchros for my tuners, but at the same time, I use some exes. And as far as the spells and trap cards go, these work in tandem with each piece of my deck, which works very well and has had a few staples of their own. Now, currently in the deck, I run 2 copies of Polymerization, a very common, very old style key card for a lot of fusion decks. Reason why I say common is that used to be when you use certain fusion cards, some like the heroes, fusion heroes and stuff like that, they run on Fusion Gate, Miracle Fusion, and a few other things like that. Polymerization being the original is probably the one of the things that keeps me coming back to it every single time I build a type of fusion deck, unless it's contact fusion. When it comes down to the day, I love the aesthetic of, I'll just show these on screen, so put down. Like, these are the alternate art, this is the alternate artwork over here, and the maximum gold version of the Polymerization I pulled a couple weeks ago. Now, the reason why I run poly, of course, any reason why you would run poly, to fuse. Whether that is for Blue Eyes Ultimate, sometimes you can use contact fusion for any other things, but most importantly, this deck has a few other hidden gems, I guess. Things that I've grown up with and I love to see at any point in time. Moving on, continuing with the fusion part of this, I have Dragon's Mirror. Again, one of my absolute favorite spell cards. Only because I'm a big dragon nut, first of all. And mainly because when it comes down to its effect where you can banish any number of dragons from your deck, hand, or field or graveyard. It works so well with some of the strategies I have in my extra deck. Only because some of the cards I have to run, or are usually run in my decks for Kaiba at least, it works in tandem with some of the other stuff that happens elsewhere. Dragon's Mirror has been a staple card for myself because of the fact it was used to summon 5-headed dragon. Yes, I do run that. And it's won me a fair few duels in my time. So, that's the reasoning for that. Of course, we have the dulled down version of Pot of Greed, Shard of Greed. Shard, again, very similar effect to Pot of Greed, except you have to wait 2 turns, because you have to draw 2 cards. But after that, all bets are off. And the other thing is, it does not work as a cheap way to use spell counters either, because it uses greed counters. And greed counters are its unique thing, which is actually pretty freaking good. So until Pot of Greed comes off the ban list at any point, Shard of Greed is going to be my go-to unless I run Pot of Desires or Pot of Extravagance. Now into some of the other ritual cards. So like I said, I had Chaos Form in my deck. This is also another one for a backup. Advanced Ritual Art. Now, basically, it's the same kind of concept as Chaos Form, except for the fact that Advanced Ritual, you can send any normal monsters that equal that level from your deck, rather than your field or your hand. It's good. Of course, again, some defensive stuff. Swords of Revealing Light. We all know it. We all love it. It is a card that can stall, but at the same time is very useful for just making sure that your opponent cannot hit you for what they want to hit you with, unless they have bypassable effects or destroy the swords entirely. Blustering Winds, 1,000 attack point boost for a turn. Enough said. Fluid Summoning Dragon. Self-explanatory. You use it while you have a Lord of D on the field. Summon 2. Enough said. Mystical Space Typhoon, again, self-explanatory. A lot of staples in this deck, but at the same time, it's because of my love for the game. Dragon Revival Rhapsody, which again works again with Lord of Dragon, or King of Dragon, I guess. And if you control Spellcaster, you can summon up to 2 dragons from your deck, or no, graveyard. At least 1 normal monster, and so on and so forth. Melody of Awakening Dragon, adding them to your hand, kind of same deal, except instead of summoning them, you add them. Majesty with Eyes of Blue. Now this card caught my eye a few times, only because the fact of you can send any Blue Eyes monster from your deck to your graveyard, and then, or no, not deck, yeah, hand or deck to the graveyard. And in turn, you can basically lock out a monster on your opponent's side of the field for the entire game, or unless it's on the field for the entire game. And honestly, it is a really it's not really a broken card. It's a semi-broken card because it's a quick play spell, but at the same time, it's a really good defensive action. And as far as that, most monsters, yes, they can get past these effects nowadays, but at the same time, it comes down to the simple fact of it is a fight or flight instinct when it comes to that kind of situation. And if you have that card in your possession, use it. Of course, you can't have a certain card like this in your deck unless you are not a full-on fan. Monster Reborn. We all know what it does. We all love it, whether we like it or not. It is a staple card among Yu-Gi-Oh! Diffusion, of course, for the fusion tactics, because why not? You sometimes need to split your monsters for the better or for the worse, and realistically, it can come in handy as a defensive tactic against things like Mirror Force and things like Sakuretsu Armor. Kind of good. Ancient Rules is the last spell card on my deck. Ancient Rules, again, self-explanatory. It is more or so there just to summon Blue Eyes if you don't have anything else in your hand or your field. Because, hey, sometimes inconsistency happens, and that's okay. Now, I only run 4 trap cards in this deck, and these are all of them. Countergate. Countergate is a useful card for when your opponent attacks you directly. You draw 1 card, and if you can special summon, if you can summon that monster, period, you can summon it to the field. Not bad for defense. Magic Cylinder, one of Shadow's actually favorite cards, because in her Magician deck, she has actually taken down some of my best cards, and full on been happy about it, but that's besides the point. It is a very good card to have in defense if your opponent has a monster that's bigger than yours and has less life points, because let's be real. If you can win by that, yeah, it's a cheeky move, but at the same time, it works. So why not? Miracle's Wake. It returns a monster from your graveyard to your field if it was destroyed this turn. Again, it is a very good card if you are on the ropes, and realistically, sometimes you might be. And the last trap, Sakuretsu Armor. Like I said, some of these cards are more for defense, and honestly, that is okay. There's nothing wrong with defense in aggressive decks, but at the same time, you have to be ready for the other things, which is why we have the extra deck monsters. In this deck, I have a full 15 card extra deck. Now, these vary from difficulty as far as usage, but at the same time, they're there because of reasons, and sometimes I need to feint out my opponent in some other way. But for the most part, it takes a lot of time to just set this up, and honestly, I have a lot of difficulty setting up extra decks. But at the same time, if you have a good archetype, if you have a good strategy set in mind, it's not that difficult. Which is why I'm starting out first with Black Rose Dragon. One of the 2 synchro monsters in my deck, and only there because it is a 2400 point easy summon if I have Crystal Dragon and, say, Escape Ghosts on the field. The other thing about this card is that its summon effect, yes, can hurt you, but at the same time, that is an optional effect. And honestly, it's not that bad if you need a reset from most things, and some things can be worth that destruction effect, even at the cost of your own monster. The other single monster on this deck is, of course, Azure Eye Silver Dragon. Of course, it is a standard Blue Eyes archetype card. It lets you summon a normal monster from your graveyard every standby phase, I do believe, if I'm correct. Yeah. And of course, we get into the fusions. Now in this deck I run, like I said earlier, I have Synchros, I have Fusions, and I have Xyz. Now, I'm going to go through the Xyz first, only because they are the newer stuff. First of all, we have 2 copies of Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon. It is a easy summon effect for the most part, but it's not the worst case scenario, as they have basically Dark Magician on the field. It's also a really good thing if you want to increase your attack points and hit into an opponent for their own monster's attack. Again, it is not a bad thing to use, and I recommend it for some of the lower decks that you can use, because again, it's like a free Dark Magician almost, just for 2 level 4s. In this deck I also run Tachyons, most specifically number 107 Galaxy-Ice Tachyon Dragon, and Chaos number 107 Neo Galaxy-Ice Tachyon Dragon. These 2 cards are pretty new to me, honestly, but at the same time they work the same way as probably one of my favorite monsters, Neo Galaxy-Ice Photon Dragon, which I do have in my deck also behind this. In fact, I have mine in my Ghost Rare, which is when I pulled it a long time ago, but besides the point. The Galaxy-Eyes monsters I run these decks, so these 3 in particular, Tachyon and Neo Photon, they are probably the staples for one of my deck's other strategies. If I can't use my fusion monsters, I can use the Xyz monsters, because the same way, they work the same direction and they have the same attack value. It also works in conjunction with their effects if they have the right cards. Now in my side deck, I do have the regular Galaxy-Eyes Photon Dragon, only for this thing, because if you have 2 monsters that have 2,000 attack points or more, you can summon that to the field. But I don't have it in this deck currently because of the fact of all I need is the fusions. And until I have that stopping point, it will stay the same. Now, of course, here's where the deck and me get very personal. First of all, we have First of the Dragons. It is only summoned by contact fusion, unless you use polymerization, in which case you need 2 normal monsters and cannot be stopped by anything but normal monsters. And that is the funny thing about nowadays, is you do not see a lot of normal monsters in the competitive scene anymore. But if you have this monster and you have it boost up with, say, Megamorph, or any sort of attack doubling power, they can't hit you back. Well, sorry, they can hit you back, but they can't destroy you. And that's the fun thing about this card, is that it is so easy to summon just by using 2 normal monsters. Any 2. And I have a lot of them in this deck. The other cards I wanted to point out were Trushula, the Dragon of Icy Imprisonment. This was a new card to me as far as bringing the deck into full fruition, but at the same time it works very well. You can contact fusion by banishing any 3 monsters. And if they so happen to be dragon monsters, a very good effect similar to the Trushula Dragon of Icy, or Dragon of the Ice Barrier synchro monster, which I used to run, where you can banish 3 cards from the field, or three cards from any side. And it is really useful in that sense, because with a 2700 attack point monster, with that effect for 3 banishing upon summon, again, not a bad play, even if you don't have that ability. The other monsters are, of course, 5-headed, which I mentioned earlier, And again, it is a personal favorite of mine as far as fusion monsters go, other than the ace monster of this deck. But Five-Headed has always had a good passion place in my heart, and I will still play it to this day, even if the dragon format does get a bit dicey. And honestly, I have no issues playing it in my decks. I never have and never will. But again, it's one of my favorites, so I have no complaints of overusing this ever. Blue Eyes Twin Burst Dragon. Again, another contact fusion, similar to First of the Dragons, where you need 2 monsters. In this case, 2 Blue Eyes, which is banishing those 2. Now, the thing about this one is that it's a really good bounce, hit and then run card, basically. I've used this on my buddy John for one time when he misplayed his Red Ice Dragoon because he couldn't hit my effect. What ended up happening is I swung into him for a less powerful attack. I took life point damage, but at the same time my attack failed. Now usually your attack would cost you more than your life points. It would cost you the monster. In this case of Blue Eyes Twin Burst, Blue Eyes Twin Burst has an ability where if you fail an attack, if you attack and your opponent's still there, you can banish it instead. Banish it. Very good for a lot of the common decks nowadays, because most monsters have destruction effects, not anti-banishment effects, which is really good. And for a basic Blue Eyes monster, I have no complaints over this. The OG Blue Eyes Ultimate. We all know it. We all semi-love it. Also, semi-hate it sometimes. No effects to speak of. It is a normal monster with no effect. But at the same time, it is a very, very easy staple, especially if you're running Blue Eyes Shining Dragon, which I am. The other 3 monsters is 1 copy of Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon. It is to me, it's a very good example of a upgraded version, or Konami taking Blue Eyes to the next level. And with the alternative forms in the deck and this in mind, this card holds a torch to some of the best, in my opinion. Using this, your opponent cannot just target or destroy this card with card effects. Enough said. And once per turn, you can target 1 monster or 1 card your opponent controls, destroy it. And if this card was fusion summoned using original name of Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon as material, you can target 3 cards your opponent controls. Instead, this card cannot attack the turn that effect is used, which is fine, but that says a lot nowadays, because if you can remove any number of cards except for 1, it works. And the last 2 in my deck that I'm going to speak of is my 2 copies of Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, my second favorite fusion monster other than Blue Eyes, or other than Five-Headed Dragon and then Blue Eyes Twin Burst, because of the fact it is a fully upgraded version of Blue Eyes Ultimate. And what I mean is, much like Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon has a Neo form, it's really nice to see that they gave Blue Eyes a Neo form as well. And with this, it is absolutely terrifying to be on the front end of it, and also the back end of it if you are on the wrong side. But basically, its effect reads, special summon with Blue Eyes, Blue Eyes, Blue Eyes. At the end of the damage step, if this is the only face-up card you control, end this fusion monster attacked. You can send 1 Blue Eyes monster from your extra deck, or Blue Eyes fusion monster from your extra deck, sorry. And this card can attack again. You can use this up to 2 times per turn. So you have your normal attack, then your secondary attack, and if you remove another one, another attack. 3 heads are better than 1, and that effect alone makes the difference for me. But that being said, that's all the time I have for on this video. So I did hope you guys enjoyed the deck analysis video I have. I do have another plan to make another one pretty soon, probably of my Dark Magician deck or my Uriah deck, which is actually a Sacred Beast variant card. I'd like you guys to leave your comments in below of what you guys think about the video, as well as the kind of style I have up here where it's just like a webcam. I have a camera right here. I have my cards to the side. But again, like I said, there's going to be some more coming, so just stay tuned for that. Kind of breaking the fourth wall, this is the weekend before the end of November, so this won't be up until that weekend comes. We took a couple days to ourselves to kind of relax, because we have a lot going on. I'm not going to say what exactly, but we have plans for some console games for you guys. Excuse me. And quite frankly, this is probably going to be one of the things you're probably going to see a little bit every once in a while. Some deck analysis between myself, and I'm going to be doing some Jess's decks as well, so Shadow's decks will be coming on. Then we're going to be tackling Magic. Yeah, Magic the Gathering. It's going to be something that's going to be different for both of us, but at the same time, it won't be that bad. The other thing I want to point out is I did not do the extra deck or the side deck for a reason of it is just how I'm going to do it for today. I didn't have enough time to do my side deck, but whatever. Also, coming soon, we're going to be doing some tabletop dueling games. So I have a couple mats set up, and again, if anybody sees these mats, yes, there are custom work from other people, and some of the artwork does not belong to me. I will admit that. Actually, I'll give you an example if I can. Maybe not, but whatever. Please note that if anybody owns these artworks, they are used for the convenience of just entertainment. They are not being used for profit at any rate. I had to go out and find the images and then purchase the product online for consumption of the mats, but at the same time, they are very, very good, and I will give all the props to the artists for these. If you see any artwork that you believe is yours, please note that it is beautiful artwork and it's being taken care of very, very well, and I really appreciate the artwork that people do use for Yu-Gi-Oh! As far as that goes, because it is sometimes spectacularly beautiful, and I will say that 100%. The mat I have currently underneath my laptop, which I have sitting right below the webcam, is actually a mural from Dark Side of Dimensions, no, Bonds Beyond Time movie, and it is actually absolutely gorgeous. So again, if you guys see anything that you guys feel is kind of outlandish, please note that it's not for any profit. It's only for the entertainment and for our use only. It's nothing to be said about the artist. If you own the artwork, I got no problem with you, dog. I appreciate you. But that being said, we're gonna have some stuff for you coming up, and just stay tuned. If you have any suggestions to give us, please do in the comments. If you do us a favor, we're trying to hit a little bit of a milestone for ourselves, being 100 views per video that we do. So if we can get there, we'll have something for you guys in the future. But for now, if you can, don't forget, leave a like, subscribe, and don't forget to ring the bell for any notifications that you might miss. And do me a favor today, and also try to share the video with anybody that you think might enjoy this. Please and thank you anyways. And one more thing before I leave. Comment your favorite Yu-Gi-Oh card that you have in memory. Do that for me, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.